key performance management question must be what will happen next. While it is important to understand and learn from what's already happened, an essential test of effective management is whether future performance can be predicted with any useful certainty. Of course, it's important and necessary to report on past performance, but wouldn't it be even more useful if we could predict future performance? Nice to know what happened last month, but what will happen next month? Can we do that? Yes, we can. Let's explore that a little more. The process behavior chart is the closest you can get to doing magic while still remaining statistically significant. In this video, I want to give you a taste for how the effective use of the PBC is proof of process management mastery. Sadly, this is true of far too many organizations. We might think we're doing process improvement, perhaps we are improving some processes, but are we actually managing our organizations and tracking process performance in a useful and sustainable and credible way? Well, not as much as I think we should be. Let's see if we can fix that. So here are the 3 questions about process performance that we certainly should be addressing. What performance do we want? We need to set some targets for our KPIs. And what's happened so far? Of course, we need to collect the data. We need a historic picture of what the process has done. And then what could be possible? So put aside the constraints, put aside what's happening now, but what other ideas could we bring to the table to say, what is this process really capable of? Not just, okay, it's going okay. Maybe the stakeholders are happy. What could we do to make them delighted? I think that's an important question. And I think there's a 4th question. So we might know what we want and we might know what's happened so far, and we've got some sense of what could be possible, but wouldn't it be useful to be able to know with some confidence what's going to happen next? It's great to know what happened last week. That's important. Wouldn't it be good to be able to confidently predict what's going to happen next week, next month, next quarter? Now we'd really be doing something useful in terms of process management and managing organizational performance. And we can do that. So this is the balance that we're trying to get. We're looking for this sweet spot between what should be, what is, what could be, and what will be. And they're moving targets, aren't they? Our targets change, the context of process operations changes, stakeholder requirements will change. We're actively changing the process, I hope, to improve it. So things are going to be changing. So I think process management and the resulting process improvement revolves around these 4 questions. What should be, what is, what could be, and what will be. And I think process mastery is about understanding the answers to these questions. Let's see how we can do that. And it's not just about understanding process models and documenting them. We need deep, profound knowledge about our process. That's the measure of good process management leading to good process improvement. What's happened in the past, what's currently happening, what is likely to happen in the future, what might happen in the future, what do we need to be prepared for? So I think deep process knowledge is what we're seeking to have. And that's the enabler for good process management and good process improvement. So here's the thing, if we're going to be thinking about what's going to happen next, we're not just reporting process performance, as important as that is, we actually want to have the ability to predict it. As the man said, prediction is difficult, especially about the future. So we're not saying that we're going to be perfect. We're not going to be able to look into some crystal ball and have a clear knowledge of 100% certainty. My life's not like that, you know that. But within reasonable bounds, the 95% plus bounds of certainty, we can make some very good predictions about what's going to happen to the process because we know so much about its history. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is through the process behavior chart. We'll come back to some more detail about this soon. I won't in this video be able to go through all of the detail because we try and make these videos reasonably short. And on the course I run, for example, we spend 2 or 3 hours on the process behavior chart. But I'm hoping I can give you at least a taste for the power of the process behavior chart and how easy it is to use and how effective it can be as a management tool. We'll come back to some of the details in a moment. It has a long history. This is certainly not my invention. I'm just a user at the end of 100 years of development. So it starts with Stewart and Deming, where all good process and organizational work starts, of course. And then in our modern times, Donald Wheeler and Mark Grabham have worked extensively in this area and written great books, as has Stacey Barr, a consultant here in Australia. So these people have done great work here. They've refined the process, they've refined the tools, and they've made it so easy for us to use. If you want to know more detail about all of this, I would recommend any and all of these books. The two in the middle, Understanding Variation and Measures of Success, are a great pair. So Understanding Variation, make sure you get the second edition. That's the Wheeler book, which is really the seminal text for all of this. Mark Grabham's book, Measures of Success, builds on that, gives lots of practical examples, very focused on process work. It's a great book. And Stacey Barr's book has lots of work about process behavior chart or XMR chart, and it's not deliberately focused on process alone, but there's some great examples there of the more general use of the XMR chart. So that's well worth the read. If you're the statistics nerd and you'd like to see under the hood to see what makes it all tick, then I'm told Making Sense of Data is as good as its title, and it shows you how all of this comes about. I can't give you a personal review of that because I've not read the book and not likely to. I'll rely on Wheeler and Grabham and Barr to have done all of that good work for us so that we've got a practical, useful tool. So lots of material there for you to follow up on if you wish. If you want something that's shorter, as a kind of introduction to it, one of my columns in the Business Rules Journal takes all of that and fleshes it out a little. So that might be a good starting point for you, and you can get that from the BR Community website free of charge. It's an easy download. So there's lots of good material there to give you the more detail that I won't be able to cover in this short video. A couple of points before we get back to the chart itself. Here's a pretty obvious thing, I guess. We don't measure constants. If something's a constant, then we don't need to measure it. Not for as long as it's a constant anyway. So we're always going to be measuring things that vary. And that's the point, isn't it? When we talk about improving process performance, we want to vary the performance of some KPI. So everything that we're measuring is a variable. And in any set of measures, doesn't matter what you're measuring, there will be variation within the measures. So to take a really simple example, if we said, here's 3 meters of string, I want you to cut it up into 50 centimeter lengths. Now, we could all do that, of course, and we can pretty much guarantee that none of those alleged 50 centimeter lengths would be actually 50 centimeters or would be the same as each other. There would be variation, just because life's like that. And it wouldn't matter, in the extreme you might make it work, but for all practical purposes, it's not possible to make 50 centimeter lengths that are identically the same length. So it could be variation. So that applies to any data set. So any data set has noise in there. There's some variation. And for the most part, what we're interested in is the variations that make a difference. Where they're tiny little variations, we don't care. But if there's a bigger variation that's indicating something that we need to do something about, that's when we want to know about. That's the thing we want to find. So imagine this kind of environment, for example, where it's very noisy, literally noisy. I think you would agree that if you're in this kind of environment, there is so much noise, so many signals coming to you, and you're just automatically ignoring most of that. But I think if your particular ringtone on your phone went off, you might notice that. If you had someone with you that you knew well and they spoke to you, you would probably hear that. You'd pick the signals in the noise, is what I'm saying. And we're looking all the time for those signals, not of the routine, but of the exceptional. And we don't care where the routine noise comes from. We're not going to go and find out where all the noise is coming from. We either don't care or it's obvious. It's not the point. But we do care about the exceptional signals. My phone's ringing. My friend, my partner is saying something to me. Somebody's screaming. It's no one we even know. but clearly there's someone in distress. We would pick up on those sorts of things. So there's the routine and then there's the exceptional. Where they want to focus is on the exceptional. Okay, so let's come back to the process behavior chart. How are we going to use the process behavior chart to find those signals in the noise for our process performance data? So this is the basic chart. Here you can see the various pieces. We have the data that we're collecting, the performance data, the obvious data coming through here. We're just plotting the dots, as they say, as they come in, whatever it is we're tracking. So that's the data shown here in the red. Now we've got a central line here, and that's an average value of a particular set of data points. So it's the kind of average performance that we're getting. And we've got something called the upper process limit and the lower natural process limit. We'll look in a moment about how we get those upper and lower limits because they're easily calculated. But what it's saying is that based on the data that we've got and based on no change happening to the process, we know that between those two limits, we will have almost all of the performance for a stable process, for a process that's not subject to any change, but going forward, 99+% of data we could expect to be within those limits. So that's saying that if we've got data points that are happening, and they might vary from here to here, and this might be quite a range, depending on the process and its performance. But if it's just varying normally up and down within this range between the two purple lines, then it's routine and it has no assignable cause, and we shouldn't bother about trying to find out what's causing the variation. Why did it go from here to here? We don't care. If something else happens, and we'll look at those signals in a moment, then we will care, but we just want to avoid the noise and look for the exceptional signals. Okay, so just a very quick insight here. I won't go into all of it, not that it's too difficult. We calculate the upper limit and the lower limit. They're calculated numbers. They're not targets. They're not whatever you think they should be. We don't care about that. They're just arithmetically calculated numbers. So here's a very basic set of numbers. X are the data points, whatever it is we're measuring. Average X is the average of those 5 data points. Pretty straightforward so far. Gets even easier. The moving range is the absolute value of the difference between consecutive data points. Standard basic statistics, and any spreadsheet product will do it for you well. So we have the moving range, and then we take an average of that moving range. I'll leave you to check my arithmetic and to look more into that. There's more detail of that in that column in the Business Rules Journal that I mentioned. But here are the formulae, and they're very straightforward. We just take for the upper limit, it's the average value of X, and we multiply the average moving range by 2.66, and we add those together. And that'll give us the upper limit. And for the lower limit, we just change the +2 or minus sign. If you want to know where we get 2.66 from, Wheeler's original book will give you all of the details. If, like me, you're happy to believe everyone, then you don't need to know, and it's just 2.66 and life is much easier. So we know now that the likelihood of variation is between 2.55 and 15.85, and if it's just bouncing around between those, then it's just noise. It's just common noise, and we don't need to worry about that. So that's just a quick insight. More details in all of those other references that I've given you. Now, how do we look for these signals? So again, just briefly here, there are 3 different types of signals we're looking for. So we're gathering data and we're plotting it however often we get it, and that might be every minute or every day or every week or every month. The more data we can get, the more frequently we can measure something, and the better we're going to be. But there are 3 sorts of signals, 3 signal rules. Rule 1 signal is a data point that's above the upper limit or below the lower limit. We're showing it above here, but that's an obvious Rule 1 signal. It's the strongest signal of them all, and it's the one that we can most quickly respond to. A Rule 2 signal is simply saying there are 8 consecutive data points above the centre line. And obviously they'd be between the centre line and the upper limit. If we had one above the upper limit, then we'd immediately have a Rule 1. So that's just 8 consecutive points. And the third rule is we've got 3 out of 4 consecutive data points. So 4 consecutive data points, and 3 of those 4 are all closer to a performance limit than to the central line. You can see these 3 here are closer to our lower limit than they are to the center line. So they're in this kind of bottom quartile, if you like. So that's what we're looking for in the data. And that's very easy to spot, very easy to find. Software you can use to capture and do all this almost automatically for you. But if you've got just basic data and you just put it in a spreadsheet, you can see it easily. It's not hard to do. You don't have to automate all of these things. So they're the signals. That's the rules that will tell us we've had a signal. And a signal means something has happened that we should do, that we can track. We should go and find out why it happened. And it might have happened because we meant it to. We've made a change to the process and we expected a signal because we expected a performance change. That's the improvement piece. Or we may not have expected it. It might have been something that happened because something else changed that wasn't of our doing. But we still need to know what that was. So all of the time then, we're doing these things. We're searching we collect the data and then we're searching for signals. And when we find a signal, we're going to analyze the cause of that signal. And you can see here that once we've had a change, we can redraw the graph, because here we've the average, the center line has dropped down and the upper and lower limits have changed twice here in this example. So we'll redraw it, we'll respond. And it's not, we're not just in the business of drawing nice charts, are we? We want to actually understand what is it about the process performance that changed, and do we like that or not? So we respond to what we've analysed, and then we keep repeating that. We just keep doing it. We just keep collecting the data, and we're just searching for these signals of an exceptional event that's worth us having a look at. And it might have had a positive or a negative impact, of course, on our performance. But in either case, we need to understand what happened to it so that we can get rid of the cause, or maybe we want to amplify the cause if it was a good result. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to report and predict. We want to predict performance. I think that's what we're really talking about here, and the whole PBC tool is about allowing us to do that. So we're analysing for exceptional variation, and then a stable process has known variation. If nothing's changing about the process, then we know what the common variation is going to be. If we've got a signal, then it means there has been a change. It might be a positive change or a negative change, and it might have been transient, but we're still going to go and try and find out what happened. The change, we might have expected it. We might have made the change, and now we're seeking the signal to confirm that what we did had the impact we meant. Or maybe we weren't expecting anything at all, but we're still testing the data all the time. And I like this phrase that Donald Wheeler uses. He talks about the process behavior chart being a way of thinking with tools attached. I think that's nice, isn't it? Because we're very good at saying what's happening now and what's the data we've got, but let's cast our mind forward, because then we really start to kind of earn our keep as process practitioners if we can make some useful predictions about future performance. So I think that's what it's about, and that's what we need to be changing and adding to our process management repertoire. Yeah, we know all about what has happened, and we've got a good sense of what's going on right now, but let's use that to build an ability to make predictions. What lies ahead. It's all very well to know what happened last week and last month. That's important. But I think we'd be really doing our job as process practitioners if we can say, within reasonable bounds of certainty, what's going to happen next week and next month. Wouldn't that be useful?